AutoPM essentially acts in lieu of a user. So when you have a really large complex task that you want to give to Genie, but you don't yourself want to have to manage Genie doing that task, AutoPM sits in your spot and makes sure that the outcome that you want is achieved before Genie responds to you. I use AutoPM every day now. It's just the most incredible thing to be able to hand off very difficult things whilst you can then go and focus on other things, or even like tackle multiple hard things at the same time. As we speak right now, AutoPM is debugging a PyTorch issue that I have on like our Genie 3 training run. So I can, be here filming this, and also like a thing that would take me, half an hour, 40 minutes, several hours, depending on the complexity of it, is just being done async for me in the background, which is amazing. It turns the agenticism of the products like up even further. So essentially, what we saw from our users when we launched Genie fairly recently is that some users were giving very, very large tasks to Genie, like compound tasks, things that required multiple different sub-steps to be done. And Genie can do that pretty well to an extent, but some of the things that we were being asked to do were like entire code base refactors, along with like internationalization and other things all in one task. So we figured that it would actually be helpful to give Genie a hand in breaking some of these things down and allowing it to focus much more tightly on like one thing at a time. And that's basically what the idea of AutoPM came from. AutoPM does that. It's that layer on top where it will take these really large tasks, break them down and focus on the outcomes for each sub-step, and then like guide Genie through doing each one of them. It just allows you to do so much more. So I think that, for instance, like when you compare to something that might be running like on your laptop, right? Even if it has an agent mode, it's relatively constrained in that environment for a start. And also it is at your whim in terms of like, if you shut your laptop, you go somewhere else, it's not just gonna keep persisting and running for you. So, AutoPM can do genuinely like, it can run for 40 minutes, an hour when it's doing a task if it needs to. And it's completely, off your device and can, you could go anywhere and do whatever like I am right now and it will keep running for you. It also is way more agentic than a lot of other tools out there, because essentially that loop of the model sat on top of Genie allows, consistent running to happen for much longer than if it was just like a single agent working on its own. Like the multi-agent aspect of it means that the run times and the task sizes can be much larger. Yes. It's difficult. Like doing a multi-agent setup like this is very difficult. Fundamentally, you always want to make sure that both of the models stay on task and don't get sidetracked or go down a bad path. So there is the potential sometimes for you to need like multiple models to always be reviewing each other's outputs to make sure that you're always sticking on the right track. We've managed to get AutoPM to sort of self-reflect a lot and do that for itself. And also it is much better than keeping Genie on task, specifically if it gives Genie like still pretty large tasks for the most part. It is able to then keep Genie on task much better than Genie would on its own, because it's as if the user was there guiding it. From a technical perspective, obviously AutoPM means that the processes that we kick off run longer, which means that the infra that we were using that has to be up for longer. And as a result, there is just more surface area for things to go wrong. So there were some engineering challenges on the AI side to make sure that everything like persisted correctly and worked nicely. It's completely changed how I work, essentially. Like everything that I do as an engineer now, I let AutoPM have like a full-on first stab at. I can be much more abstract in my prompts to it, because it actually takes on a lot of the responsibility of scoping out how something should be done and where it should look and what it should research. I can essentially start asking more for outcomes than beforehand. if you're using Genie like more collaboratively and more, synchronously, it's much nicer for a user to have like much more control. So if I'm using just Genie and I'm there and I'm going to be sat in front of it working with it, I'm happy to like tell it, okay, maybe we should look over here, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. If I'm using AutoPM, by definition, I probably don't want to be sat in front of the Cosign platform while it's doing it. I want to, shoot a video, or I want to go and do something else. As a result, the fact that I can just be much more fire and forget, here's this high level abstract thing, please go and deliver me this result, is much nicer. Even I was out at dinner last night and I got AutoPM to do a few things for me whilst we were there. That's amazing. I could just type something on my phone. I wasn't typing out a long, complex, detailed plan or anything like that. It just took on that burden for me. I think teams that are essentially already constrained by resource, a lot of teams are. I think that teams where it would be very useful for something to take a first pass before an engineer even arrives to it, teams with large backlogs, any of these kinds of problems in engineering teams where a lot of the work that needs to be done has been backed up over time, specifically if it's like surrounding things like bugs and so on. AutoPM's great at just like, here's the ticket that was created at the time, here's the context that we have. Go ahead and figure out for yourself what the problem is, how you can reproduce it, and then like how you want to direct Genie to fix the problem. Oftentimes bugs and issues just define a problem, they don't propose a solution. And as a result, AutoPM is able to work with Genie very effectively in breaking everything down, reproducing it, and delivering a solution without much input from a user at all. I was quite shocked at how good the score was. I think there's actually even more room for improvement on it. We're still working on it. I think it really shows what can come from something as simple as like breaking down a problem, and also having a second pair of eyes looking at an output of the LLM. Genie has always been trained to like self-reflect and run what it can in terms of figuring out if its solution is actually functionally correct when it comes to the problem it was given. But AutoPM has just been essentially a second filter, a second level of rigor on top of that, where it can spot things that Genie may have missed. It also is fundamentally based on like a much more powerful reasoning model than Genie is based on as well. So you have that advantage as well, where there is just fundamentally more intelligence in that layer. So it's much better at delegating to the model that is extremely good at software engineering in its purest form, but can help ideate, figure out what the user wanted, figure out what is the outcome that we need here, and really get Genie to produce that outcome. I think it's a few things. One of the main differences in workflow is, of course, with just Genie on its own and no AutoPM enabled, you can use us in a similar way to how you might use like an AI-powered IDE. With AutoPM turned on specifically, you're able to use it in a much more fire and forget way that you probably wouldn't be used to doing in, a Cursor, a Windsurf, or whatever. As a result, you can like batch up a lot of bits of work and give them all in parallel to this thing. And because we're running in the cloud, we can do all of that in parallel and deliver you the PRs in parallel as well. Not really a workflow that is as prevalent on the on-device AI-powered IDE side. That's also, of course, true for Genie as well. Like Genie, if you have like smaller tasks and things where you're willing to be much more descriptive and specific in terms of like what you'd like it to do, you can also use Genie without AutoPM in those scenarios as well, and you'll probably get very good outcomes. But AutoPM really, it just dials up that agentic nature of it all. The biggest thing for me that it's unlocked is now when I have complex like bugs and problems that I'm working on, I'm able to offload those to AutoPM in a way that I wasn't really able to with Genie. I think that like Genie's obviously smart and very good at what it does, but for really complex problems that require a lot of a lot of like upfront research and understanding. AutoPM just does a better job at that. Fundamentally, it's a smarter model under the hood as well. So using that in conjunction with Genie just enables much more capability across the board. So I have used it when I've had like horrible ML problems that, you know, are just, you know, quite painful to solve generally, in places where I would have otherwise had to bring a huge amount of context into, you know, some sort of chat provider online and constantly update that context for me and manage the debugging process. Whereas now I can essentially just like hand it off and say, here's the problem, and AutoPM and Genie can just iteratively work through, reproduce the problem, trying to find a solution, and so on, all without me being involved. Well, to start with, AutoPM is going to be out as a research preview, so it's going to be free to use for everyone. We're still working on it. We want to make it better. We want to hear feedback. So I think to start with, absolutely go ahead and use it. It will be at no extra cost. Moving on after that though, it will be, we believe as a company in, you know, fixed cost products. We don't want any ACUs. We don't want to be paying for compute time. We don't want to be paying per token or anything like that. We ourselves, when we use products, like the certainty of knowing how much it's going to cost us. So as a result, it probably will move to a sort of deep research style pricing model afterwards, where you get a certain number of uses depending on the tier you're on of AutoPM. And over time, we're obviously going to be doing a huge amount of work to bring the cost down and allow more usage to happen. Even with Genie 2, when we first built Genie 2 was far more expensive to run, but since then we've managed to bring the cost of running Genie 2 down dramatically, I think by over 10x. So we're going to be looking to do a similar thing with AutoPM. But to start with, we just want to hear the feedback. We want to hear how people are using it and what it can do for people. Well, fundamentally, the tools that are Genie and AutoPM and all the scaffolding and the product that lives around them are all purpose-built for this one thing. We have heavily optimized everything from the tools that are available to the LLMs themselves to be good as software engineers, essentially. And you can Frankenstein a bunch of different tools together to get some kind of outcome with these things, but the amount of work that we've put in to specialize these tools for our use case means you get significantly better results, and that is seen every time we run a benchmark. A huge amount of the benchmark alpha that we have is obviously through the work that we do in customizing and fine-tuning these LLMs, but also it's in the scaffolding that we have and the product that lives around the LLM. That's all incredibly important, and I think is often overlooked when we talk about, you know, the different tools that are in this space, or just the base model capability. So we mentioned it in the Genie 2 announcement, but Genie 3 progress is happening faster and faster by the day. It's really going to be quite impressive in terms of its ability to use, you know, a code execution environment, really like run commands on your behalf. That will bring the agentic nature of the tool even further forward. So it will be able to iterate much more quickly without needing as much influence from external things like CI and so on. And it will be tailored for doing software engineering tasks because it's been reinforcement tuned on software engineering tasks. More software engineering tasks than any software engineer could do in their entire life. Many times more. So fundamentally, all of the work that we're doing at the moment is going into that Genie 3 model, and we think it's going to be an amazing software engineering model, but also an amazing model across the board at other like reasoning related tasks.